Hey there, this is Beth Wilson. I'm the Pulaski County Horticulture Agent, and I'm going to do a little talk today on plants that sow themselves. Um, and I say what's not to love. With some exceptions, most of them are great plants, and we probably should try to incorporate more of these self-seeders into our landscapes. But there are some caveats as well. So we'll talk about all that. You can uh, find me on Twitter at Hort Agent Beth. I'm on Facebook and YouTube at Pulaski County Horticulture. And I'm also on Instagram at KY Plants. So let's get going on some of these self-seeders. Again, why do we want to include these self-seeders? Well, it takes a lot of burden off of us to plant everything. And so with that, that as you're getting older, maybe you want to incorporate more of these self-seeders into your landscapes. Sometimes if you have an area that you really want to fill in, you really don't have to do a whole lot. Just plant a few established plants and kind of let it go after that. You can also share plants with others. We all like to do that. We all like to receive some of those things. So to me, that's a great community thing. And a lot of times, some of these are good enough at sowing themselves that they can compete with some of those non-natives that may be taken over or some of our weeds just for weed control. In these pictures here, we've got a Verbena, a native Verbena variety. That's a really nice ground cover that you may want to incorporate. I'm going to try to emphasize in this list the actual ones that are going to seed, not just spread via rhizomes or other methods, but we'll throw in, and I'm not going to mention all these, but we'll get to that. So what not to love is, yes, some of them are going to be way too aggressive or too weedy. They may not compete well. So the two I have pictured here, big no-nos. On the right there is garlic chives. I hate this plant, and I'm sorry to say that, but it has invaded the landscape at our extension office, and it's just almost impossible to get rid of it. You have to dig them out, and I will continue to have to dig out until I retire, I'm sure. The other one there on the bottom left is brown-eyed Susan. I do love brown-eyed Susan, but it is just a little too weedy in my spot. In a prairie situation, it might be great, but when you have a more formal landscape, of course, these self-seeders aren't going to work because you're going to get an informal look anyway. And when you're looking at plants, if they have this word naturalize, that generally means they're going to be able to spread on their own without much help from you. So when you're looking at plants, just look for that term. It's kind of a universal term that means that. Okay, so let's get going. I am not going to go over every single one of these plants, and this is certainly not all the plants, but these are some of pretty good ones, I think, that don't get too out of bounds. I do have them listed there as natives and non-natives, and we'll go through, if you're looking at this as a recording, you can go back and look at this list later, but I'm going to move on, try to make this a fairly short presentation. All right, so let's talk about spring. What's going to be blooming, doing its thing in the spring? We'll start with some natives. This is Golden Alexander. It is native. It is a very, very early spring bloomer, sometimes in March, most definitely in April. And it just is a really nice plant. Now, this is a perennial plant. I was trying to stay away from perennials, but this one does self-seed, and you can move the plants around where you want them, or you can just kind of let it fill in an area. This is one of these plants that's related to parsley. It's in that parsley family that supports our swallowtail butterflies. I have seen as many as 6 or 7 on one plant, one very small plant. And the other good thing about this is it can almost, to me, it's almost an evergreen. It's a semi-evergreen. Even in the dead of winter time, it'll still look like something. And last year, for the first time, I actually notice some interesting fall color and winter color. So you may, I don't have a picture of that, but you may want to take a look at it. This is a really nice plant. It will kind of crowd out other things if you're having problems with weeds. So Golden Alexander. Rose Verbena is what I showed you in the first, one of the first slides. This is just a really nice ground cover. This is our native. There are plenty of cultivars if you prefer that. But this is our native Verbena, very nice. And it does spread to cover the ground, but it also creates little plants that you can move around or let them do what they want to do. Poppies. The annual poppy that we think of is the one on the right. It is more red than orange. This picture kind of looks orangish, but it is a true annual. Those seed heads you see there are going to empty out and just create more plants for next year. It's a great naturalizing plant. The Papaver orientale is a short-lived perennial. That's on the left. This is in my mom's backyard, and in her yard it has kind of swept through. It hasn't stayed where she put it. It's like I said, it's a short-lived perennial. So as they die and they seed, they keep kind of moving across the back of her garden. And she's okay with that. She tries to control them a little bit, but she's fine with that. It fills in the area. There's hardly any weeds around there where they're thick. So it's a really nice one as well. Columbines. Columbines are nice. They can take part shade to full sun. The picture on the left, it may be very difficult to see, but there's a hummingbird that's at that flower. These are early spring bloomers, have real interesting bloom. They will self-sow readily if they like where they are, and they'll just be a nice mass. But you do have to remember part shade. They do a little bit better in part shade, but I don't like them as well in full sun, but I think it's just because I've seen them in the woods and I just like them in the woods, but they can take some full sun. A lot of people curse these little Johnny Jumpups, but again, nice spring color, purple. I mean, to me, that picture on the right and even the left, they're beautiful. So if you have room to do it, I would consider putting in some. Again, you can, what you don't want, you can pull up, but these are going to be short-lived perennials. I think I've forgotten this. But they're just really nice little plants and just a burst of spring color. It's really nice. And our blue false indigos, and I don't have native up there. I should, but it is a native. They have bred this one to death. So if you want something other than the native, you can certainly get it in a number of colors. But it's a nice bluish purple color. Probably have a good 4 weeks of bloom. These will self-sow very readily. The seed pods are on the right there. And to me, they're kind of ornamental because they will rattle with the breeze. The seeds in them will rattle. But you will find that these are perennial plants, but you will find a lot of the little seedlings in that picture on the bottom. You'll find a lot of those. And you can, again, move those around or give them away or just let them fill in an area. But a nice native plant there. Full sun for this one or part shade. Borage is a true annual. I love borage because it's got these really true blue flowers. There's really nothing purple about them. They are blue, and that's a very rare thing in the plant world. But you can see on the left the habit of it. It's in the front and it's in the foreground. It's a very coarse habit. They're very hairy, as you can see on the right picture with the flower buds. It's an herb a lot of people use to impart a cucumber flavor into things, but this is a true annual. It does die, and if you have it once, generally it will come back unless you've had a lot of weird disturbance in that area. But these are just, I love these plants, and if with a little bit of dew on them, you can get some great pictures. So this is borage, and these would appreciate full sun. Cilantro. I love cilantro, but I can't get it to do well in the heat of the summer, which it makes sense, but you know, this one is, cilantro for me is evergreen at my house. And the picture on the right and the far left are at my house. I've kind of let it take over, kind of let fill in the edge between a bed and the grass. And they just, I can go out right now. That's a picture from just a few days ago on the left and the right. I can go out right now and pick all the cilantro I want. So it is an annual. It does like full sun, and the flowers in the middle there attracts a lot of pollinators. But this is a nice herb, just like borage, that you can, you know, create a little area for and just let it go, and it will come back year after year. All right, let's switch to summer. Couldn't have a presentation about self-seeders without Cosmos. Just a wonderful, wonderful plant. It will fill in an area, but it is a true annual. It will die and come back from seed. I just love Cosmos. I don't have any personally, but when I see it, I just love it. So get you some Cosmos. It's in a lot of the wildflower mixes that you get in a pack. So it's great. Hearty Begonia is one you might not know a whole lot about. So I thought I'd throw this in here. We do have begonias that are hardy, a begonia that is hardy in Kentucky. And this is it. This is a picture from my master gardener. She's got it mixed with some ferns and azaleas, so you can tell it probably needs a little bit of shade, and it does. It does decently well in dry shade, but it may need some help with some watering every once in a while. Just a gorgeous plant. It is a perennial, but it will drop a lot of seed, and it even will drop little bulbils, which are vegetative propagation units of a plant. And so they'll drop those as well. And so it can fill in a little shady area fairly quickly. And for her in Somerset, it blooms from about August to frost. So it starts in the summer, but it goes clear till frost. So this is a Hearty Begonia, and that's not Cosmos. I'm sorry, I didn't fix that. Again, could not talk about self-seeders without including Celosia. We have Celosia cristata. This is the coxcomb type on the right and the plumosa type on the left. I think I planted these one time in part of the garden, probably 50 feet away, and now it's in a spot that's 50 feet away. It just bizarre how it moves, but the seeds are tiny, and they'll readily come up though. And extremely ornamental. I mean, this will bloom all summer long. So great one to include. I love Amaranthus. I don't like the weeds that are in the Amaranthus family at all, but I love this. This is Love Liza bleeding on the left and Elephant Head on the right. The Love Lies bleeding is the caudatus, and the Elephant Head is tricolor. These are spectacular. I mean, like I said, I hate the amaranths that are weeds, and there's a lot of them that are, but these are true annuals, and they drop seed readily and will come right back. I have, for the first time, planted some of the Elephant Head just to fool around with it. This is not from my garden. I planted it very late. It did make a seed head, but it wasn't near as cool as the picture on the right there. But I'm gonna see if it'll come back. I hope it does. This would be these both would be full sun plants. Here's a native that is a perennial, but readily will self-seed. It's dotted Bbomb. So it's one of our Monardas. This is a real interesting native plant. We think of Monardas, but don't think of this one a lot. So this is a full sun plant. Right here, if you can see my pointer, here's a bunch and here's a bunch, and it'll start filling in this area here pretty readily. But if you want to see this plant, it's at the Children's Garden at the Pulaski County Library. Pollinators love it. You need to have this one. And then we have our other Bbomb, which is Monarch Fistulosa. This one, the punctata here gets about waist high or so. And I'm 5'3", and this one will be head high for me at 5'3". So, but this is what we normally think of as our native Monarda. It's a wonderful plant, and it will readily self-seed, but it is a perennial with self-seeding tendencies. Again, one of these you can't you can't have a presentation on self-seeders without this one. This is our spider flower. It's not native. This is Cleum haslerana, and they just these are so these are so cool plants. I haven't had these much at the house, but my mom had some, and I put some of hers out. She basically had this situation going on at her house with these little babies all over the place. She gave me 5 or 6 of them. I stuck them out, and this is what they did. Just great plant. They will be back in that area, no doubt about it. If you don't want the straight species, you can get some dwarf. These are pretty tall. These are, I don't know, probably 4 to 5 feet tall. But you can get cultivars that are much shorter. Full sun, nothing special as far as soil goes. Another non-native, but I started growing this plant about 25 years ago. This is Tithonia rotundifolia. It's our Mexican sunflower. The pictures do not do the orange flowers justice. They are just in your face orange with yellow centers. I mean, I love this plant, but it's big. This one, I believe this one is called Torch, but I do think they have a cultivar that's a little bit smaller. This one probably gets 6 feet tall. Probably what you're seeing there is about 5 to 6 feet tall, but the bees absolutely love this plant. It will self-sow, but not aggressively sow at all. So I encourage you to try that one as well. And moss rose, oh my gosh, I love little moss rose. It can take the heat, it can take dry, it can take whatever you throw at it. The picture on the left there with the multicolored ones, I just bought a flat or half a flat and stuck them out, and they were just like the best thing during that hot dry period in the summertime. Just wonderful. But you can get there's many cultivars you can get. The only problem I have with moss rose, if you want to call it a problem, is the picture on the right. If the sun's not out, a lot of times those blooms just don't open. So it looks like a green mass, which is fine, but you know, it's not the pop of color that you want. And on the bottom there, you can see the seed, the little seed capsules and how it self-seeds. But I will always have this plant at home because it'll just come up in my containers. And I just let it because they're just happy plants. All right, we're getting into fall. So we're gonna wrap this up pretty quick, but this is fall. Our native orange coneflowers are really nice plant that just a really, I mean, sharp yellow color in the fall. Will self-seed, and about every seed will germinate, but it's not a problem. It seems to be not terribly aggressive, but this is just a real nice native. And we have, of course, we can talk about purple coneflower, and that is a self-seeder as well. This one doesn't tend to have the problems with the mycoplasmas that our purple coneflowers have, and where you have to just rogue out plants. And of course, it's a different color than our purple coneflower, but we have other purples that we can incorporate with other plants, and we'll look at a couple in a minute here. And by the way, orange coneflower is a perennial. Again, these natives it's hard to find a true annual native that's a self-seeder as well. So a lot of these are perennials and will self-seed and fill in. Some of you may not have heard of this plant, which is Chrysopsis mariana. It's Maryland golden aster, really different, a little different color of yellow than the orange coneflower. Will self-sow. It's a short-lived perennial, so this will self-seed and fill in that area fine, and you always have this if you have one. So I'll give this one a try. It's, you know, you can find it at our native plant nurseries, but it's hard to find otherwise, I'll just tell you. Blue mist flower used to be in the eupatoriums related to boneset and things like that. It's still related to boneset, but they've changed the eupatorium to Conoclinum colistinum. And this is just a real nice native. It kind of, in the area where I have it, it's a little wetter, and you see plants there all summer, and then you don't really pay any attention to them until they start to bloom, and bam, there they are. And I love this little weird star-shaped flower. I think it's aptly named mist flower. I love that. But they do like well-drained soils. And if you can have a little place where it's maybe a tad wetter, this one would do very well. Again, this is a perennial that will self-seed though. I wanted to throw in a couple of grasses. Bottlebrush grass is one that I've had on the north side of my house. I did have to yank up some of them because they were taking over, they were self-seeding a little too much there, but it was not aggressive at all. The feature, of course, this is going to be something that's blooming in the summer, but has real interesting bottlebrush seed head in the fall and all through the winter. So this is a true one of these plants that really do better in a part. We'll have a couple grasses that do well in part shade. I'm going to highlight them both here in a minute, but this is one of them, but it does prefer a partial shade, not full sun for this one. And this is a clump grass, and just does extremely well here. I would, if you had a little place on the north side of your house that this could do, this could be a nice fill in, I would certainly give it a shot. And then river oats is Casmanthium. I have a love-hate relationship with river oats. I think the picture in the middle there where it's filling in underneath trees, I think it's great to use plants as your mulch underneath trees. In nature, that's what happens. That's what I think is preferred, rather than us just putting down more mulch and more mulch and more mulch. I'm not an anti-mulch at all. I think mulch is good, but I think if we can get plants in there that can come in and be our living mulches, everything's better. This plant can certainly do what's that picture is depicting in the middle there. It will fill in an area. It's good to have boundaries. Of course, I sometimes let things go a little too far, and then 5 years later, I'll look back and say, why didn't I do something 2 or 3 years ago? But river oats is beautiful. The seed heads are beautiful, especially the right-hand picture there in the wintertime. When that breeze blows, they'll just, you'll just hear them. I think it's a great plant, but, do kind of keep on top of it. That's all I can say about that. All right, and the last one, I think it's the last one we're going to talk about, is Aromatic Aster. There's lots and lots of asters, and I highly encourage any aster, really, because they're all so good and they all provide such a great nectar source for bees as they're heading into wintertime, trying to get their stores of honey up. But this one is a perennial again, but it does readily self-seed. Very easy to grow from seed. And the picture on the left is this is actually in Somerset at a park that anybody can walk through, but it does fill in very nicely and just is a wonderful kind of pale blue purple color. Okay, that's all I've got on self-seeders. As you know, there are many, many more. Just be sure you're not planting something that's going to be an invasive plant. Check a lot of different references. Sometimes something that's invasive in one part of the country would not be invasive here, or vice versa. So, talk to people before talk to other gardeners that are kind of in the know about it, and make sure you're not planting a problem. And of course, you can always call me at 606-679-6361. That's the Pulaski County Extension Office. And you can also get a hold of me at my email. It's just my name, beth.wilson@uky.edu. Thanks for watching.